What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. So the teams have been announced for New Zealand and Ireland for Game 2 of the July Internationals. Now, last week, of course, New Zealand managing to get a pretty convincing win over Ireland. Actually, I thought it was going to be a little bit closer before the game kicked off, and it was a good half hour of pretty close rugby, and then slowly those mistakes started to kick in for Ireland. I do remember saying in the match report we did for anyone who hasn't checked out, there's a much more in-depth one. I actually thought there had been some wet weather before the game had kicked off because there were so many handling errors, balls slipping out of people's hands. I saw people drying it with towel. A lot of people wanted to correct me in the comments and say there was no wet weather. What on earth is this guy on about? I was like, I don't know. I thought it had been raining beforehand. Apparently, just poor handling errors is what is coming across Ireland slowly. Having a few more issues later and later into that game. The New Zealand team just gathered together. A couple of sporadic tries. People like Sevu Reece running the length of the field for a try. Ardie Savea absolutely smashing his way through. New Zealand played very well and came away with a win. So going into this game, a couple of switch-ups will be needed. I mean, New Zealand would probably be pretty happy. Only a couple of areas for them to work on, probably. Mainly that defensive area. The covered defense in terms of the line breaks was pretty good, but I think the wall standard defense might need a bit of tweaking for this knitting game versus Ireland, and Ireland will just want to cut down on the number of mistakes, number of penalties, number of issues, just to try and gel a little bit more together, keep up that intensity for the full 80, not just the first half hour. So going into this game then, we'll check out the teams that have been announced. Starting off with the home team, New Zealand. In the front row, we've got George Bower, Cody Taylor, Offa Tu'ungafasi. This is a good setup. This is, I think this might even be the exact same setup as we saw. Oh, I think Tu'ungafasi started on the bench. No, he didn't. He started in the front row, and then Tu'unga Koafi came on later on. I've got to try and remember. I'm getting more used to some of these names from New Zealand now. The front row, from what I remember, the scrummaging looked relatively decent from them, so no need for a switch. I don't think that's a terrible move. In the lock department, Brodie Retallick retaining that number 4 shirt, and Scott Barrett moving into 5. So no Sam Whitelock starting off. I'm just going to have a look at the replacements. Doesn't look like he's in there. Maybe an injury knock, or maybe they're just switching it up a bit. A couple of people were informing me last week that Scott Barrett really, not built for that utility back. Much better in terms of lock. I only really know him as a lock. But I don't think he played terribly at flanker, to be honest. I didn't think he had a super bad game. But moving into that 5 shirt now, into that lock department, I actually thought it might be the other way round. I thought Retallick I've seen play 4 and 5. I've only ever really seen Scott Barrett play 4 when I think of him as a lock. So we'll see how they get on. But, both of them doing pretty well in terms of the lineouts last week. In the back row, Dalton Papali'i comes in that number 6 shirt. Sam Cane remaining as captain and holding out the 7 shirt. And Ardie Savea in their number 8. Yeah, I think this is a nice move. Dalton Papali'i came in, some tremendous tackles in that second half last week. A couple of try savers as well right at the end of the game, so absolutely reckon he probably deserves to be in this team. Fast player, we'd like to see him have a bit more ball in hand. We didn't really get to see that necessarily in the second half, but he's a great running player with the ball. Sam Cane, ribs still intact from a fantastic hit from Gary Ringrose last week. And Ardie Savea, brilliant game from him, absolutely brilliant game. Ardie Savea has been one of those people that I feel has dipped a little bit in the last, 2 years ago. He sort of began to dip off. He seems to be coming back now into some really top form, which is so nice to see. Really good player when you see him in full flight. In the halfback partnership, Aaron Smith, Beauden Barrett, no changes needed there. Played absolutely brilliantly last week. Both of them, Beauden Barrett with a little interception, saved a try opportunity there. Aaron Smith just finding room. The experience of that player coming in absolutely to use. In the centre partnership, Quinta Paya and Rico Ioane. Again, the centre partnership we saw last week. Again, working well. No need for a change. Rico Ioane, again, a couple of big try-saving tackles right on the line, just dislodging the ball. Really well played, and Quinta Paya just got himself over the try line, working well with Barrett in that 10-12 axis. I think it's a good setup. And then finally in the back 3, the same back 3 we saw last week, Fainga Anaku, Sevu Reece and Jordie Barrett, who, again, all 3 of them really playing well. Jordie Barrett got over for a try, Sevu Reece got over for a try, Fainga Anaku nearly got a try, literally stopped on the try line. So realistically, not a lot of changes this week. What are we really looking at? Dalton Papali'i starting and Barrett moving into 5 instead of Sam Whitelock. Seems to be the only switches, from just a general outlook there. The team worked well. They scored good points. The defence, in terms of scramble defence, worked well. So just gelling that certain areas together. I don't think there's any reason for them to switch up this team. This team is looking like a pretty good starting 15. In terms of the replacements then, we've got Taukeo. Aidan Ross is going to be making his debut. So again, still getting those debutants. We did talk last week about how many debutants New Zealand had coming in, but they all playing very well. And then Angus Tarveo as well going to be coming in there. Patrick Tuipulotu. Looking forward to seeing a bit of Tuipulotu. I've seen him play in terms of club level. He's doing really well. Be nice to see him get on this field as well now. Sawakula Also getting over the try line last week from the back of the scrum. Seems like a rapid player from that number 8 from the back of a set piece. So it's very hard to get into a team when you've got Artie Sarvea on, I guess. So it'd be nice to see a bit more from him. In replacement 21, Fakatava. Again, another name I don't know. Going to be making his debut. We'll keep an eye out for him. Richie Mwanga in that 22 shirt, and then Will Jordan making his way back into the fray. If you're a betting man, you'll probably be wanting to see Will Jordan get on, probably in that sort of 65, 70-minute marker when players are beginning to get tired. Can play fullback, can play wing, but if you want to try score a Will Jordan's your man. I think this is a good team, to be honest. Not really a great deal of switches. A lot of the reasons these players have stayed in is for positive reasons, so that's good. Any of the changes made, doesn't seem to be enormous changes. We're not really dropping any people. The only person missing out is Sam Whitelock, actually. The rest of them, I believe, all started last week. So that might be an injury. Sam Whitelock had a good game. I can't imagine that's on form. So nice to see from him there. And then in terms of the replacements, a nice sprinkling of new caps coming in as well, along with some people that we've seen only a little bit from, people like Sawakula. Will be nice to see a bit more from him getting in there. So overall, New Zealand looking strong. On to the Ireland team then, who felt that game slip away from them last week. They really started off well, getting that try very early on with Keith Earls. But yeah, just after that half-hour mark, it just began to slip away from them a bit. Couple of really unfortunate situations not to have got a try. Joey Carberry could have got one. Van der Fleer could have got one. There was a couple of them right in the 80th minute. I think, was it Sheehan who nearly got one as well? They were really, really desperately looking to get over that try line. Scoreboard could have been closer, but they want to just make a couple of improvements for this week, just to not allow New Zealand to have the chances to score so many points. So in terms of the Ireland team, Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, Tyke Furlong, the exact same front row we saw last week. Tyke Byrne, James Ryan, 4-5. Exactly what we saw last week. 6, 7, 8, Peter O'Mahony, Josh Van der Fleer, Keelan Doris, exactly what we saw last week. This would be what we would be expecting from Ireland now. This Ireland team, we saw it in the Six Nations, moving into the July internationals now. This team is really beginning to just sort of become a team. We sort of know exactly what this team is going to be from Ireland. So don't be expecting a great deal of switch-ups in this front 8. Very hard to get in. A couple of people out, people like Ian Henderson, I think, still out with a little bit of a knock, so he won't be getting in. But I think this is a good situation. I think they just want to just synergize down a little bit. This is a really top class set of forwards. There's no reason to really be making any of these switches. So I don't disagree with this point at all. I think a lot of these players, we're just looking to improve on what they did last week and try and make it a bit more impactful. In terms of the backs, then, halfback partnership, Johnny Sexton still at captain and Jameson Gibson Park. I thought Park absolutely outshined Conor Murray. I really wasn't that impressed when Conor Murray came on. It looked like he was just desperately trying to get penalties as opposed to just playing the game. Gibson Park, I thought, actually played pretty well for the majority of the game. Johnny Sexton back. I did think he picked up a bit of an injury, went off I think it was in the first half, he still went off. Joey Carberry did well, to be fair, coming on. But nice to see Johnny Sexton back, and he just settles that game down for Ireland a bit, gives them a bit more leadership role. So nice to see. Centre partnership, no change either. Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose, even though Bundy Aki got his try last week. I think Robbie Henshaw had a good defensive game. Gary Ringrose actually had an incredible game. I would maybe even say, in terms of like man of the matches, I know we always give it towards the winning team, but in terms of an Ireland man of the match, I probably would have given it to Gary Ringrose last week. Thought he had a really good game, absolutely deserves to be retaining that outside centre. And then the back three, only one change here. James Lowe staying on that left wing. Mac Hansen comes in on the right wing, and Hugo Keenan. Now this is surprising because Keith Earls I actually thought was doing the most in terms of that back three last week. Bit of a shame not to see him in there. He's also not named in the replacement, so maybe a bit of a training injury, but Mac Hansen certainly got a lot to offer. We haven't really seen a lot from him. Mac Hansen is still probably like sub 5 caps at this point. So looking forward to see a bit more from him. Very, very fast player. Can carve out a lot of room, but we just need to see that ball being more expansive. We saw New Zealand last week really utilising those wingers. But from my memory of remembering the Ireland team, they really went to use those forwards a lot rather than really releasing a lot of the backs. So it'd be nice to see people like Mac Hansen really get a chance somewhere on a bit of room to make some good ground for Ireland. In terms of the replacements then, Rob Herring, Cian Healy and Finlay Bealham. That's an experienced front row coming on in that second half. That will probably be, we did begin to feel that scrum just moving towards that New Zealand in that second half. The ball was a little bit easy for them to recycle in terms of the breakdown, but also from the set piece in terms of the scrum. So, experienced front row, you want to see them coming on, not letting New Zealand just drive over you in terms of the scrum, and not just holding up. You want to be able to actually hold them in position. We saw the Sawakula try, just picking the ball up and running over, no one able to get there to stop him. So they want to try and take good charge of the scrum situation. Rest of the replacement forwards then, Kieran Treadwell and Jack Conan, both coming on last game, and neither of them necessarily making the biggest impact. Again, maybe would have liked to see them come on that little bit earlier. Jack Conan, yeah, I don't remember him really getting going that much. I saw him involved a little bit more, but not really running with the ball in hand. That might be my memory. It's over a week ago now. I tend to forget things. In terms of the replacements back, Conor Murray, Joey Carberry, Bundyaki, again, same as last week. So not a lot of changes across the board for either team, really. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But New Zealand will be probably happier going into this game with their team settled more so than the Ireland team. I'm actually kind of wondering whether Ireland could have gone for a bit of a switch up here and maybe gone for a 6-2 split. I think Jameson Gibson-Park was playing well. I'm not really sure whether you maybe wanted the replacement coming on so early there for him. I would maybe look to have Conor Murray on the bench here with maybe like a Bundyaki and maybe drop Joey Carberry, because I know Conor Murray can take over in terms of that fly half position if you really need him to. Absolutely not in terms of like great experience, but he can kick towards the post at a really high standard, to be fair. But he has also filled in at fly half occasionally when you need him to. So if Johnny Sexton took a knock, he can maybe fill in there just to hold that out. And I would maybe have gone for the 6-2 split here, because the issue wasn't the Ireland backs weren't really launching. There was a couple of handling errors, absolutely. But for me, the issue in that Ireland pack was that the forwards slowly began to get worn down in that second half. They played with high intensity for the first half hour, and you just begin to feel that fatigue kicking in a little bit. I might have liked a 6-2 split, so Ireland could have just elongated their forwards out a bit. It would probably force New Zealand to play a bit more expansively, and I think the defensive rate from some of the wingers, people like Ringrose, Henshaw, I think James Lowe had a good defensive game as well. I think they would be able to hold out just enough. It would just be stopping the handling errors. That was the main thing. We saw the Severis try. You don't need to offload in every tackle. You don't need to be trying these outrageous passes. Just go through the phases. The first try they got came from like a 13-phase move, and it ended in a try. You don't need to be trying any of these wild and crazy things. The New Zealand defensive line wasn't the most set it could be. And no doubt they will have worked on that from last week, so we'll probably be seeing a more defensively set line this week. But I think utilising those backs, going through the phases, you might begin to find some room, and backing your own forwards with a 6-2 split would allow you to have a bit longevity-wise in terms of the scrums and the line-outs and the driving mauls. You might have been able to see that game pan out a little bit differently. So what do we think in terms of a score prediction then? Well, I feel like New Zealand won quite comfortably last week, and we're not really seeing a lot of changes from either side, so it's going to come down to a tactics-based game. I'm still going to lean towards New Zealand. I think I'm still going to lean towards New Zealand anyway. I think Ireland will play well. It might be fine that it might be a bit tighter this week than it was last week, so I'm going to lean towards New Zealand. I don't think it'll be quite as much. I might go sort of similar to what I had last week. I might say New Zealand to win by... I'm going to go with 12. I'm going to say 12. I still think they've got the ability there. I think some of the replacements they've got coming in terms of people like Will Jordan, Mo Wanga, the Sour Cooler lad who's coming out of nowhere, Tui Piloto's a big ball carrier as well. So although they've got debutants coming on from the bench, they've got try scorers coming on from the bench as well. And that's what you want in terms of an impact from the bench. You want lads who are going to potentially just see out that game, final nail in the coffin, or if it's a tight game, are just going to push you over that line. I think this New Zealand team is looking on good form at the minute. So I'm going to back New Zealand to win. But do let me know down in the comments who you think will win. What do you think the final score will be? How many tries do you think people are going to score? Who do you think is going to score the tries? All that fun stuff. Make sure you do drop it down in the comments, because I really do enjoy it. We've already done one of these videos now for the South Africa versus Wales game. That should already be out on the channel by the time this video comes out. So go check out that preview video as well. And to keep up to date with not just the preview videos, but also some of the match reports we're going to be doing about the July internationals. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel just to keep up to date with all the latest videos as they come out. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.